Like the passing of time itself, things come and go. But the question is simple. Where is Oris? Remember what must be 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a bit further, maybe 8 years ago, when Oris Watches were the it watches. Always featured, always discussed somewhere. Since then, though, we just don't hear enough about them anymore. And look, the brand is still around. Their watches are excellent and they are widely popular, make no mistake. This video is by no means a criticism of the watches themselves, but plainly asking that question, why don't we see them anymore? Why aren't they featured here? And when we consider how much the brand has been doing behind the scenes, going in-house with their movements, spending time improving so many details, it's a testament to their work ethic. But this could also be a part of the overarching problem. Oris barely registers as a conversation anymore, and that's pretty surreal considering the huge boom they experienced half a decade ago. The big crown pointer date, the 65 diver, the Aquis, the Pro Pilot, these are such strong names, such strong collections that the brand has curated over the years. And what's even better is that we can picture all of these watches just by name association alone. That shows you how their designs and styles, they definitely have staying power. So I ask you, have people moved on from this brand for bigger, different things? Or is there something more subliminal going on that maybe has not been addressed? Something to add before getting into the meat of the video that I think is important that maybe does impact the way Oris is seen and recognized is that it's not a part of any large conglomerate. It's privately owned. So not being a part of Swatch Group, Richemont, LVMH, that means they lack a lot of the resources that these big brands have. And that in a long-term affects budgets when it comes to marketing and advertising, exposure in general. As we know, in this day and age, media, advertising, being able to get a product out there on billboards as much as possible, dedicating what, 2/3 of your budget into the advertising campaign is such an important aspect to promote these pieces. And the way that the brand seems to conduct themselves now, as they have been, they focus more on the boutique experience, the user experience, a more one-on-one sort of interaction, which is niche in itself. Just thinking about it now, I loved my 65 diver. To this day, I believe it's still one of the thinnest dive watches that you can get. The wearing experience is incredible. That mid case is like razor sharp. It's such a great piece. Hindsight, again, I regret selling it, but as normally is the case, had to sacrifice it to fund other pieces. And I'm sure a lot of us are here knowing all too well that we probably started in this hobby thanks to a watch like the Big Crown Pointer Date or the Aquis, which you can still find for amazing prices. But anyway, I've made a list of 3 reasons that indicate to me why there has been this shift with regards to audience attention, with regards to how these watches have been or not been received on YouTube as a platform. I feel, and I may be wrong here, that where it all started, where the shift really began, was when the brand first started integrating in-house calibers into their pieces. Moving away from Solita and incorporating something like the Caliber 400. There was a lot of skepticism about how they would work, how they would function over time, and of course, it all boils down to price. You see, Oris was such a great brand to discuss in the early days because their pieces had, and still have in a lot of respects, excellent price points. I mean, the Aquis, to this day, it's still one of the best dive watches on the market with that Goldilocks 41.5mm diameter. The way they've added all of these color variations, these sun-brushed dials of greens, blues, reds. I mean, they're beautiful, but they're also functional with rock-solid specs that still meet modern requirements and standards. All the while, they're very discreet to wear because of that almost lugless bracelet integration. But the starting point to this trend of moving in-house, I believe in a lot of ways switched off part of their audience. Considering for similar money, you could now pursue a second-hand Omega, for example. And giving that choice between Oris or Omega, it's not a very difficult decision. Now, maybe this was miscommunicated. Maybe Oris as a brand themselves overlooked a large portion of their enthusiasts and why the watches appealed to them so much. I would say a large portion got into Oris because value for money was there. Could we say that through all of this, in an effort to go upmarket, to compete with names like Tudor at that time who were also transitioning into in-house calibers, Oris might have lost sight of who they were targeting. Another reason why Oris seems to have dropped off with a lot of people is that much of their newer projects, at least ones that we have been seeing lately, have been trend-specific, trend-focused, a victim of trends. I mean, that could be the tagline right there, a victim of trends. Where the brand was once known for being quite dynamic with their methods of creating and changing, giving new and interesting pieces, we're seeing a brand now that is trying to keep up and cater to the demands of the trends of that specific year. At least we have seen for the last, 4 years in a row. What's the problem with that? Trends come and go. I mean, it's obvious. No sooner have they been set do the sights move somewhere else. And what happens when you're trying to tail after that interest is that the interest, more often than not, has already moved on. Two glaringly obvious cases that I can think off the top of my head: cotton candy dials. Who asked for these? I have no idea. When the world was going ballistic for colored dial Oyster Perpetuals, and every other brand was pursuing that same vision of a green, a pink, a yellow, a blue colorway for a fairly simple watch. Yes, many brands were doing this, more brands than we can name, but Oris was also a culprit. And they created, I might be wrong here, but they still create these brightly colored pieces. This on its own is quite a textbook example of what it means to follow trends. And I'm sure the brand knew that along the way too. They knew that these designs weren't going to be here forever. And like so many others, it was considered more of a cash grab than anything concrete that had any kind of solidity. Using big words today, always recommend a cup of coffee. Then we look to a model like the Pro Pilot. A watch that has been in their collection for a very long time. So many variations and evolutions of this model line. And the Pro Pilot X was their attempt to pursue the upsurge of interest in the integrated bracelet sports watch arena. And it's a great looking piece. That original skeleton, full titanium, 10-day power reserve, looks spectacular. And a few years back, following in the footsteps of the brightly colored dials, they created a series using similar features. A far more toned down version of the Pro Pilot X in a more wearable size with a lot of that original tech still included. But again, the watches arrived and they disappeared. They didn't have the staying power. And of course now, hindsight, we see that the trend for the integrated bracelet sports watch is absolutely on the decline. Other scenarios that could be seen as trends, but I don't know if they're considered trends anymore, is like their Ocean Upcycle initiative, using recycled polyethylene tetraphthalate, putting my Bachelor's of Science degree to good use here, to create these multicolored plastic dials. These were a novelty when they arrived, because they give you an artistic flair around something that is essentially throwaway. And very much like using meteorite or precious stones on dials, they all have their own individual fingerprint. And you can do the same with plastic. But today, I don't know who pursues them, whether or not they have outstayed their welcome. Are people still interested in this sort of collection? And that then leads on to the last point as to why many of us just aren't looking at Oris as much anymore. Their designs over the last, near decade, they have not changed or evolved. Or at least not to an extent that we have noticed much. Just look at this year's Watches and Wonders, for example. They revamped the entire Aquis collection with updates so subtle that they are practically identical. It's ironic because some of the big names in the industry do this every single year and they always manage to get attention and high acclaim. But Oris is not one of these big brands. And I think the truth of the matter is they just don't throw enough of a fuss about it into the media space. They simply don't push hard enough in the advertising. And their designs, since there's nothing new or bold injected into the mix, they become repetitive. Returning to reason number one, with so much focus and push towards in-house, the attention towards actually drawing new people in, new customers to see their entirely refreshed collections, it's taken a back seat. Where are the design innovations beyond the nifty color changes or the Caliber 400 movement? Like I said earlier, where is a watch like the Aquis depth gauge? Small little Oris at the time was creating this sort of piece where brands like Omega, Rolex, even Blancpain, they weren't touching. And they were creating it at such a good price. Where is the Pro Pilot X skeleton level of innovation? Packed with excitement, depth, lots of character, and considering its competition, pretty good value for money. The long and short of it is that people aren't talking about Oris watches on this platform because there isn't much to really talk about, and that is the biggest shame. Because they are fantastic watches, because you can still find them for great prices. And a lot of their designs, though, some can be simple and safe, others can be broad and experimental. What Oris is lacking at the moment is that level of recognizability that so many other names have. And I think what they should be doing is going back to basics, thinking about how they should bridge this gap. Because it is a strong name that once upon a time had such a huge following on this platform and many others. And I think for the brand to dissect the issues like alienating themselves from their primary target market from the early years, to following trends and being more trend focused instead of coming up with anything with a strong foundation and structure, something new and refreshing, while at the same time evolving their product lines, pushing the narrative further and getting people reinvested in the brand. The creative guy in me sees all of this, and I would hope that the brand would take a more adventurous step forward into the future. I'd like to hear from you. What do you think caused the drop-off of Oris watches on this platform? And how great would it be to see them produce more abstract pieces, something with a bit more excitement, watches that we can really sink our teeth into? As always, everyone, thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.